What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. It's been quite a little while since we last reconvened. You know, life happens, but we're here, we're back, and better time than ever. We're previewing the NBA Finals today, boys. I'm excited. First of all, uh, it's good to see y'all again. I know we just caught up a little bit there off camera, but real quick, just do a nice little whip around. How would you guys say the playoffs overall has been for you guys?
Uh, I think in one conference it's been the best. Like I think this has probably been in terms of my recent memory. This is so recency bias, but I think this might be top 3 in terms of overall playoffs and scenarios for me. Like at least from what I can remember in terms of watching basketball
Mm.
because I think the series have been so competitive and so unpredictable aside from the East with all these injuries going down the star players throughout the playoffs. But I think for the most part, we've had really competitive series. I thought the first round was like a really good primer for like a setup into what we're gonna see because the first round I thought was ultra competitive, except for obviously the Celtics series.
Mm.
But to some degree, every game was like I don't think there's going to be a clear winner on every single night. Um, Yeah, it's been competitive. I think that also speaks to like just the balance of rosters across the league. But I think it's probably one of my favorite playoff series in terms of like competition, moments, storylines, all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's been so good. I'm pretty sure most of you guys would probably agree too.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, before we get the Celtics fans' opinion, you know, as a Bucks fan, definitely not my favorite playoffs, but uh since I'm trying to go away from that and like trying to be more, unbiased and more objective, for sure, you know, I mean, the West has been a gauntlet. I mean, I don't think anybody really had Denver going out in the second round, no matter how it
No,
shaked out. And then
yeah,
for it to come down to a game 7, man, there's nothing better. And then even all like the people emerging from like not necessarily the ashes, but you know, obviously the last bit of Ant we saw was a little left a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth. But overall, I think Anthony Edwards has shown he's more than capable of being the face of the league within these next few years as we're shifting in the guard. And I mean, Jalen Brunson, he was looking like
yeah,
he was looking like a top 2 point guard, and he wasn't too. You know what I'm saying? And even to show some love to our Canadian brother, Andrew Nembhard, like
yeah. He
he looks
hooped.
like
He
he could
hooped.
be a legit type of Robin kind of player. And if there's like anything like more selfishly that I'm taking away from the playoffs, I think it's that Team Canada is gonna be so nice, man. I mean, just
Yeah,
thinking about it, we just
Nikhil
mentioned
Alexander
Nemhard.
Walker.
Yeah, Nas shown like I mean, this past couple of years he's kind of revitalized his role into being that sort of 3 and D wing, but I think this year you really saw him all put it together. And I mean, Lou Dort, the way they're pretty lenient with the tough play in your EuroLeague style ball, he's gonna be perfect for that. Shea is gonna be Shea, so you know, not to get too ahead of like the curve, but man, Team Canada is gonna be so nice. But Christian, man, your team's regular season is finally over. You guys played over 90 plus games, and now your postseason finally starts. How have you been feeling so far?
Personally, about the Celtics playoffs, I can't lie. It has looked like the easiest road in a while. But I do think, considering their matchups, obviously, I mean, it's been just set in stone, like with how the rules of the NBA are. But they've had the easiest road because they've been the best team all year long.
For
I
sure.
think
Yeah,
they've just
yeah,
made. I think they've just made games look easy. And I think it's been most importantly impressive too that really this team has, at least without Kristaps Porzingis, a very similar genetic makeup to pretty much the team they've been throughout the last 5+ years, 8 years basically since Jason Tatum has joined the team. So Given that there's more experience, I think it's really important that they're winning games very easily without Kristaps Porzingis. I think they've had some tough matchups, and I wouldn't say Al Horford is any slouch. Obviously, he's been doing his job, and he's been a monumental part, even part of the game, just keeping them, I guess, strong in that backcourt, or sorry, the front court. But um, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of scared about this series. I can't lie. I think it'll definitely be the biggest challenge they've had, because I think the West has pretty much been where all the viewership has been for a reason. I don't think the East, like with given all the injuries, I think just like the sort of unfortunate early drop offs with some teams. It's just I'm scared to see what's actually going to happen once these two teams go up against each other. But I am confident,
Yeah.
and I think we'll talk about matchups in a bit. But yeah, I'm confident about that.
No doubt. Something that like I've been really like getting into using in terms of like wording when it comes to viewing the playoffs is aura, man.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
when a player has that aura. Anthony Edwards has aura. Jalen Brunson has aura. Luca and Kyrie have aura. But I mean, the Celtics, it for sure feels like it's been a bit of a drag to get here. But I think the thing we can't forget, and JJ Redick was talking about on his podcast, is that you still got to win the games at the end of the day. And they've been punched in the mouth a couple times. We look back to that Miami Heat game where it was never really a game to begin with.
Yeah.
The
I think
Cavs gave
I
up
think that
gave them a good couple punches.
yeah, and I was just gonna jump in and say that I think that Miami Heat game almost sort of woke up a sleeping giant to some degree. Because like Chin, you talked about it a little bit. You still have to, and DJ, you said like they still have to win the games, and they were the best team in the NBA. And I think because they were the best team, like we also can't sift over the fact that like they rewarded themselves by being the best team all season long. Like it's not like they changed anything, and so they obviously, you reap the benefit of being the better team, having the better seed, having the better path throughout the year into the playoffs because they played at such high level from the very beginning of the season. And even I we like to harp on it a little bit with regards to the matchups throughout the playoffs. Like they've had the easiest road, so to speak. But like if we were talking about everyone being healthy, I know that's not the case. Like you can't play those what if games. But if we played those what if games, this is a completely different path for the
Oh
Celtics,
yeah,
and we'd probably
they
be
would go
talking
through
about
their
it
own
being
gauntlet for sure.
yeah. And so I think they definitely deserve a lot of credit. And I think that just shows all the more just how good the Celtics are, as opposed to them being having. I think they've definitely had an easy road. Like, don't get me wrong, but that also shows how dominant they've been since the beginning of the season, even without Porzingis. And even when they had Porzingis in the lineup, that team was very clearly like that. That makeup was so unique, and their style of play was enhanced because like of his ability to stretch the floor and defend the rim. But yeah, I don't know. Like winning games, all they've showed us is like they are clearly the best team. They're the right team in the East. They're the right team to be in the finals. But what scares me a little bit is because they haven't been punched in the mouth since that wake up call against Miami. Like how are they gonna respond? Because we've seen in the past, like obviously the team is sort of the same makeup. If they get punched in the mouth, like what's their level of response?
Mm, no doubt. Like I'm not saying this is for sure what's going to happen, but I would not be surprised if we see game 1 because the Celtics have been on break for like
Yeah.
it's going to be like closer to a month once the first game rolls around, but I would not be surprised if game 1, they're lackadaisical, still kind of going through the motions. Yeah, all of them have like a bit of finals experience, but you know, when you're off, when you're on break for that long, even if you are like fully locking in and doing all your workouts and stuff, we always say nothing beats game speed. And,
Yeah, you're out of
the
game rhythm.
Dallas Mavericks have played a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
let's talk about who guards who in terms of like the starting lineup. Who do you guys think the matchup would be? And this is assuming, you know, Porzingis is healthy. Because I think even if he's not and Al still starts, I would assume that the coverages is still somewhat similar, just since they can both stretch the floor.
Right.
I mean, Chin, who do you
Mm,
think? Because I feel like you obviously watch the team more closely than we do, but I'm almost
so we're
thinking I'm almost thinking they put Derek White on Luca.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
are we talking? Oh, we're talking Boston guarding Dallas right now.
I think so. I
Yeah, let's
mean,
start
like
there.
I
Yeah.
Let's start
guess in
there.
that let's start there. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think between Drew and I mean DJ's watched Drew enough to obviously through the years. And Derek, I think it's just a size thing with Derek guarding Luca. Um, I do think you could see a lot of switching going on though, just with Luca's size, and I think it's like such an underrated part of his game is that with his drive comes a lot of physicality, and I wouldn't be surprised with I guess how small Dallas is that JT would even switch on to Luca from time to time,
yeah.
or even Jalen. Um, I think Kyrie is the biggest non-negotiable, where Drew Holiday I think will be his
For sure.
um,
Yeah.
primary defender. Derek Jones Jr. I think is, in all respect to him, more of just their slashing, um, lob catcher. Like I don't know if you guys saw that stat at one point in the last series where like teams with most alley oops was like Dallas was at like 52, and every other team below them was like 8. Like
Yeah.
that's like
Oh, was that
literally been a part.
just for this run?
No, it's for the whole playoff run since the conference finals. They like no one is throwing like lobs like that, and it's like genuinely a part of their game. Um, so I
And we
think
we
like
should, we should definitely talk about that too because that makeup makes them so different. It's almost like we don't. And sorry to jump in like this,
no,
but
it's all
like
good.
I feel like this is almost what Lob City was supposed to be to some
Yeah.
degree
Oh, low key, yeah.
in terms of their offensive makeup.
Hmm.
Obviously they never had a guy like Luca or Kyrie, but they had a guy like CP. They had multiple offensive weapons with guys like Jamal Crawford, and then you obviously had the bigs who were able to catch lobs, and you had also slashers, 3D players. In terms of its like genetic offensive makeup, it's very similar. But obviously the defense was a big part and kind of a big separation point. But like, yeah, the lob game is pretty much their system because at some like when you get caught up in traps, and I think Boston's going to be a really good team in terms of their size and their switchability. They're going to be able to take a lot of that stuff away. But a lot of teams, quite frankly, it goes back to the Minnesota series where everyone was talking about Chris Finch making these defensive matchups and adjustments. To some degree, I like understand the criticism, but like you have two of the best playmakers on planet Earth on the same team, and the way they're able to break up plays and the lob is no longer for them like the flashy move or because everyone looks at the lob and looks at the obviously the back cut and the alley play, when that's literally their genetic makeup because they have guys who can create that play from anywhere, and because um almost at every position they have guys who can finish at the rim from any pass. So it's no longer it's almost like their breakup play. It's like their how do I say this? Um their bailout play. Because so often you see Kyrie and Luca come down the middle on a screen and roll, and then those two guys are so good at putting guys in prison on the back pocket. And a guy like Porzingis, that's going to be much more difficult to do. But that lob pass is literally the first thing they're looking for. If it and then the second part comes where if the defense is dropped back, they're gonna look for the lob or they're gonna look for the floater. They're gonna look for the shortstop. But like that's literally what they look for almost every possession down the floor, whether it's Gafford, or it's Lively, who has been so good for them. It's just insane because like that's literally become a part of their system. And so when you're so scared about catching the finish at the lob, like that's why they've been able to hit so many outside shots at the same time. I don't know, it's just interesting like how their makeup is and how like that the alley oop is such a big part of their offensive system now.
Yeah, I think it's also a bit of that's what the defense is giving them. Because I mean, you saw it in the Minnesota series where the option was to always like blitz Luca or Kyrie off of the pick and roll, and then I mean, Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively are looking like the next kind of Twin Towers almost. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I mean, to get back to it, I definitely think Kyrie should or Drew should shadow Kyrie for the entire series, just because you know I love Drew Holiday. I remember 2K13 before class, playing with Christian before school, and that was Drew Holiday on the Sixers, and this was I think Iggy's last year on the Sixers, or he might have already been in Denver, but yeah, I've been a big Drew Holiday fan for a long time, but if you put Drew on Luca, I think it's going to be barbecue chicken the entire series. Even to look back at his last series in Milwaukee, we saw what Jimmy was doing. I think Luca could
look
do
at what
all that and
look,
more.
yeah, look at what Butler was doing to him, and I love Drew the
Yeah,
same way.
and I think like the big matchup in terms of like who's guarding who is really going to come down to for the perspective of Dallas is what are Derek Jones Jr. and PJ Washington going to do guarding wise against the two Jays? Because in my
Yeah,
opinion, I think I prefer Derek Jones on Tatum, just because he's a little more lankier, he's got a little more wiry, and we know that Tatum's like he can take you off on all three levels, no problem. And then PJ and Jalen, I feel just have a similar build where they're a little stockier. They definitely have that heft to them, that girth, and I think that's gonna be that's what I would do.
Earth.
But then I think the big thing, and I guess I want to pose it to a question for y'all is: do you think about almost starting Lively? Because I think I love Gafford, but I think when it comes to guarding in space and how prone he is to trying to go for the block, it's almost, do you want to give the rookie that type of shine? Because I think he guards in space a lot better. But I'm saying this all to say I do think the way they do, I don't think they change up too much in terms of the rotation. Because we saw even in this series with Minnesota where Gafford was the starter, but Lively's getting like a bulk of the center man minutes. So that's how I'm thinking they're gonna guard. What would y'all say to that?
It does come down, and I think he will be available come finals. But I think it comes down to if Kristaps is playing, and I think it's because Kristaps, from a paint perspective, although he's not the best paint player as far as scoring goes, he is definitely more lethal than Al Horford just at
Mm,
this given time. And I think someone like Daniel Gafford, one has obviously just objectively more experience, but he's also, I think, a bigger paint presence on the
true.
defensive
Yeah.
side. Now, if Al Horford is playing, I think Derek Lively can hold up his own. And I think he is also a bit more agile to close out on just any passes going out, for like farther out shots. Um, I think that's like a huge thing is that like there's going to be a lot of, I think, um, JT or JB going in and the shots coming out to Derek White or even Drew Holiday. It's going to be a lot of like trying to gain the attraction and just like winning or losing by the three. So I do think, yeah, that it's kind of like a probable matchup right now. But I would say start Derek Lively if Al Horford plays, start Daniel Gafford if Kristaps Porzingis plays. I think that's just the personnel matchups.
I like that. Speaking of, or going back to it, bro, Derek Lively's got aura, man. He's got that little pizzazz. He's got it. I mean, even to look at like the Mavs, he's got Tyson Chandler as like a mentor, which is
Yeah,
that's definitely somebody you would want in
if
your
he
corner.
turns out to be Tyson Chandler, that's a hell of a career.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember. I remember when he was in high school. I heard he would like he could shoot, but then again, I mean,
It
Have you
all
guys ever
changes when you
seen?
get to the NBA.
Yeah, true, true. That had, have you guys ever seen Kevon Looney's high school tape?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
he's
dude
like
was a
KD.
hooper.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
Now, granted, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact, like, I think he tore his ACL at UCLA, but
Mm.
you know, Derek Lively, I think, has the potential to really like be that kind of level of a player. I mean, if he can even get back to a little bit of the stretching, that would be dope. But yeah, I like how you were saying, Chin, with oh, I
Can I
can't.
just say quick?
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, this is random. This is gonna be completely different what you're thinking. Is Derek Lively gonna be what we thought Evan Mobley would turn into?
Oh, that's hard because like
They're
I
there's some degree they're different games, but I feel
yeah.
like Lively there's an it factor to him that I think he develops even a more cerebral game than what Evan Mobley currently has.
No, I can see
I
that.
think Evan. Sorry, I just think Evan Mobley's in prison. I think I think he definitely needs to find a new route. Probably leave that team, to be honest.
I don't know. I've traded Jarrett before. before.
Well,
Before
yeah, I'm not.
for
I'm not saying he's an easy. It's an easy way for him
I
to
know what
get
you're
out.
saying.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're
but
saying too.
I think like that franchise is so mixed up right now, and they're honestly looking like Utah 2.0. And
Yeah,
Oh shit.
it's a
like
great
That's
comparison. That's a
yeah,
that's a
great
good
comparison.
comparison, but that's oh
like
man.
they're gonna finish at the top every year, but as long as the Celtics are in the conference, as long as
They don't
Philadelphia
have
is
enough
even
to
in the
get over.
conference, they're not
Or
getting
until they
over.
find a real three, man. That three position has been the bane of their existence in the last 4 years.
Hey
Yeah,
man. Karis LeVert did his part in that series. Scored a bunch of
yeah,
buckets, and they got cooked on the other end.
but yeah. What were we even fucking talking about?
We were talking about
We're talking about the
Derek Lively.
Derek Lively.
Derek Lively. Yeah. Um, yeah. No, he's nice.
And to go back or to talk to your Evan Mobley point thing, Ruben. I think I see that, but I think it's like it's also kind of hard to make that comparison just cuz I think coming out of college, Evan Mobley was kind of like that blue chip. You knew you were getting like, we throw the word around loosely. We were getting a generational defender. And I think for the most part he's lived up to that to an extent, but I just don't think he's really. And I think it's just a matter of being on a team that has a Donovan Mitchell and a Darius Garland and a Jared Allen, where he hasn't, he's the guy that's kind of had to take a back seat. And I think you're seeing that with how Derek Lively's like, he's really been able to put his imprint on this team year one. He's been the heart and soul of this team. And I think that's always been the thing with Luka's teams. Because, I mean, we're seeing now, you know, shit sweet when you don't got Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber taking up a bulk of your front court minutes.
Maxi Kleber.
Yeah, but
Dude.
the brother needs to lock
Can
in,
I
man.
okay, so like with the defensive thing we're talking about, I don't think matchups in this series are gonna matter until we get to the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because the
That's.
Celtics are so good at defending like schematically. I don't think we've seen a better defensive team in a while.
Mhm. I don't think
Because
there's anybody who can switch as much as they can.
no, yeah, exactly. And I think the difference between people might look at us and say, "Well, dude, you're talking about how they found like Dallas found a lot of paint success despite having the defensive player of the year." The difference is when they had Cat and Rudy in switches, there was very clear that Rudy was going to stay in a drop half the time, and the main defender wouldn't hedge. I think there was a breakdown in the play in the last game when Luka just went bonkers on the screen and roll, and their coverages were they're so messed up because I feel like then this is one of the criticism is they weren't willing to switch or they weren't willing to blitz that heavy enough, and I find that if you're not making if you're giving Lucas space and time to make decisions, I think that's when he's at his best. I don't think Boston's going to allow him to do that. I don't think Boston's going to allow Kyrie to make decisions, um, you know, when he's in the middle of a screen and roll play. because Jason Tatum starts at the 4 for them. So Dallas naturally plays a smaller brand of basketball, even though they have a lot of success in the paint. This is why I think, to some degree, part of me is even thinking that Boston could potentially dominate this series because defensively, they're so good at tracking ball handlers and they're so good at making the read. Like, if they need to switch this play, and they're just not going to give Luka and Kyrie the same space and time that Minnesota gave them. And then in the same time, you don't have a guy like Cat and Rudy. Like, these guys can't really guard in space. Tatum can. To some degree, Horford can. He's shown that throughout his entire career.
Mhm.
And absolutely, Porzingis will make you pay because his biggest threat is the ability to catch the ball in the perimeter. And like Chin, like let me know if you think like I'm wrong in this analysis, but it's like the moment that the Celtics or they put the Celtics in a screen and roll um situation, they're more than happy to switch it and put Porzingis out and Luca because he can absolutely stay in front. I don't think that he can actually guard like Rudy can, but he's not two stepping like Rudy on a out on the he's not two stepping like Rudy on an island. And because he has so much length, like he's actually if I'm not mistaken, he's bigger than Rudy at 7'3" or at 7'4". And so I think what they're gonna do is they're gonna completely push against that. And even Horford, like if Horford was put in that situation, he's definitely much better in open space. So like I just don't think individual matchups are gonna matter until like the last 3-4 minutes. But even to some degree, like people are talking about how they had the success against Minnesota and how they could do the same thing against Boston. It's just a completely different makeup. Like Tatum being your 4, I think defensively is also a massive game changer for them because when you go from having to go in a screen and roll situation against Tatum versus Cat, one's barbecue chicken and one's like, oh crap, this guy can actually guard me outside. So, um, I don't know, man. I think the lob plays are going to be really difficult to find in this series, in particular.
Honestly, the Mavericks are gonna have a tough time, mostly just finding like what's gonna work in this series and what's not. I think like when you think about their two primary functions of scoring, let's put it that way, is I think arguably from my perspective, just watching their games right now, it's a lot of just like momentum threes,
Yeah,
like swinging it out even to Luca from Kyrie to Luca, and it's maybe like a 30-foot three, but it's working. And then that lob game, both of those things are not going to be as easily possible. And I do think when you really think about the personnel matchups, there's no one that is going to catch a lob as easily in this sort of defensive
yeah,
scheme, going up against this sort of defensive scheme, because you have players that can get back through the backcourts when, like defense is compromised. You have players like JT and JB who can, go up against those people who are trying to catch lobs. Like
yeah,
it's not really going to be as easy to cut past. Maybe let's put it this way:
yeah,
it's not as easy to cut past JT as it is Cat or Rudy.
yeah,
And I think I had this argument with someone the other day that Rudy like was the best. He was saying Rudy was like their best defensive player, and while he was like just objectively, Rudy isn't that type of player that I think can go up against a fast offense. I think he just holds down the paint and scares players away. But when you're playing against a fast team, it's just like
yeah. You pull him out of
it's
the paint.
different.
You pull him out of the paint. I think Dallas's offense is so predicated on mismatch hunting,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? Like, and there's no mismatch against Boston, bro.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah, Luca and Kyrie. I mean, again, like I said earlier, they're so good at putting defenders in prison because at least in the last series, Rudy was in the drop, so they had to chase and they had to stay on the hip. And so there's two decisions: there's a lob, there's a pass out, and or there's a short shot. And I think once they get into that situation, it's just gonna go boom switch, and then Luca's gonna try and go 1-on-1. He's gonna pass it out like in terms of the rhythm, like you said, Chin, like the rhythm shots, the rhythm creation, everything's based on cuts. Like I'm like talking myself out of thinking that the Mavs could actually pull this off because defensively they have everything in the book to cover individual matchups and schematically they're so good like as a team to nullify everything that the Mavs have done so well up until this point.
If they play right, yeah,
If they
I
play
think
right.
objectively, I'd say they do. Like, you're not afraid if, say, something gets compromised and Drew Holiday has to switch on to Derek Jones Jr. Or Drew Holiday even has to switch on to, I don't know, PJ Washington. Like, obviously there's a size matchup there, but we know Drew Holiday is Defensive Player of the Year, like caliber player. He's
Yeah.
like if you really look at it, there's no switch besides Al Horford that's like going to be like the mismatch you're looking for. But truth be told, like it's hard to really gain that sort of mismatch with Boston
Yeah.
to begin with.
Yeah.
'Cause even
I
now,
think like,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, and I'm saying like, and this is maybe where my bias comes out, but I personally think Al Horford is still a very serviceable defender, even where he's at.
100%.
Oh yeah,
And,
you
and
can.
I've
100%.
He's moving with that kind of last dance kind of sort of
exactly,
vigor.
yeah, like
I
he
think,
he he goes up against guards without fear.
yeah, he can definitely move in space. I think the difference in terms of how this series plays out too, to some degree, is rotations, like
Mhm.
bench.
For sure.
And I mean, I would argue in terms of Joe Mazzulla's rotations, like he's done such a good job of placing guys in the rotation and allowing guys to rest and utilizing the bench in a way that doesn't compromise them. But I would sit here and say that Dallas's depth chart is 30 times better than what Boston has.
I would agree.
And I think that's the difference maker because once Derek Lively comes off the bench, if and or what they decide to ultimately start or whatever, that's those two guys there. You're talking about Josh Green, you're talking about Tim Hardaway, and Jason Kidd has also done a good job with managing bench minutes and being able to have Luka or Kyrie on the floor at all times. I'm probably missing a player here in this rotation, but
Jaden Hardy's got a little bit of burn these past
yeah,
couple
yeah,
of games.
yeah. And so I think that's gonna matter. I mean, I think you see Sam Hauser out there, you're looking for that mismatch, and I think that's where it plays a part. But I mean, Sam Hauser plays like what on average 15 minutes a night,
Yeah.
so
Something like that.
Peyton
uh,
Pritchard might not even get in the game, man.
yeah, and so that's difficult. It's really hard to think about, and I think the depth chart's going to make a huge difference for the Mavs.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Like I think when it comes to the Mavs, as much as they're gonna be lacking in terms of being able to match up 5 for 5, I think they also have like the most potential to have like the role player game, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because you go back to like even if
absolutely.
when you look at this Minnesota series, man, two of those games specifically, I think game 2 and game 4. Game 2 you had the Jalen McDaniels game, and that was, if you're getting that kind of production from that guy who's like starting to shoot threes but isn't like a full down knockdown 3 and D wing yet, you got to close that out. And then even in game 4, Nas Reed couldn't miss. You got to close that out. And I think you're seeing a similar thing with how this team's shaping up in terms of, you know, I think a lot when I was talking to people, they were talking about how they're going to guard. They were looking back at like the Minnesota series and the non-Rudy minutes. But I kind of like if there is, obviously there's not a one-of-one match, but I look almost back more so towards the Mavs and OKC series because I think, in
Yeah,
terms of personnel, that's probably where they better match up. And if there was a guy who took advantage of the fact that, or the way that OKC was guarding, it was PJ Washington. I think
that's
he's a
yeah,
guy that could probably be a big swing in this series. You know, Josh Green is like another body they can throw out if like either Derek Jones or PJ Washington's gets into early foul trouble. The big rotation is for sure a good thing to have. You don't have 6 fouls to guard Porzingis with. You got 12. And then I'm a big believer in Jaden Hardy. I don't believe him and THJ will get too many minutes just because you know those brothers are allergic to passing. But you know we'll I think when it comes to the depth is it could play a role, but we also know that when it comes to the finals, you're only really playing like 6, 7 guys max, and it's not even like obviously they provide the impact, but I think in the case of Boston, it's more so to get the Jays and the backcourt a nice little bit of rest before
Yeah,
you hit the ground running in the fourth quarter for sure. Who would y'all say is like the X factor
I was
for
literally
each
gonna ask
team?
you guys
Yeah,
that for each team. Yeah, I think it's definitely you said it already. I think it's definitely PJ for the Mavs
mm,
because I'm looking at him as almost like the team's Swiss Army knife because
definitely.
he can do
Yeah.
multiple things on the floor. I think if they want to go small, they can play him at the five, which he's done for a lot of his career already. Um, Obviously, if they decide to go ultra massive, he's good enough to play at three, and because this team is, I think in terms of size, like they could potentially run the two bigs and have PJ play the three. I mean, it really depends on what their
Oh,
makeup
that
looks
would
like. They
be
haven't done a whole
interesting.
lot of that. I think that'd be an interesting look, just considering even though Boston has one big on the floor at all times, there's a lot of length between their players, and I think one way that you can counteract that is with some extra size on the floor. But I think PJ, in terms of what he brings, not only defensively, but I think he has to be. I think he has to contribute. I think he has to score buckets for this team to get anywhere because like there has to be another massive threat on the floor outside of Kyrie and Luca because I mean the follow up question I was going to pose to you guys was like what is one thing that you could think of right now that Boston would struggle with against Dallas? And I can't objectively think of anything that I would say to this day, like right now, that I think Boston would significantly struggle with against Dallas. Because individually, schematically, like defensively, offensively, I don't think there's one thing that I can sit here and be like, wow, I don't think there's a weakness that Boston has that Dallas could exploit, other than if they were to play Sam Hauser 35 minutes a night. So, like, yeah, I definitely think PJ Washington's the X factor for Dallas. On Boston's side, I think we got to see Jason Tatum be Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think he hasn't had like the greatest run, but that's purely because this team is so freaking good that he hasn't had to put up 35, 40 points a night. And I don't think he's had to have triple doubles. I think and you saw Jalen Brown just win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP because he was playing nuts out of his mind in that series. But yeah, I think this is a series where like you have to have Tatum be the best guy on the floor.
Yeah. Uh, I think for me, I don't think the X factor is necessarily a player, but more so just mm, like in oh fuck, I don't want to use the word again, like an aura or vibe of the team, because
Mm,
they always say young teams have to go through the fire before they come out. Well, if you think about the Celtics, they've been through multiple layers of hell. Because I mean, Eastern Conference Finals, what is it, like 5 out of the last 6 or 7 years? And yeah, I think Jason Tatum, I don't expect him to shoot 30% from three this series. Definitely not. Because, if he is that Mamba disciple, I think him getting into his second finals, like I think there's gonna be a clear sense of urgency and an aggression that he's gonna be playing with that is going to translate into a lot of scoring and a lot of, and even if not, Jason Tatum's proven to be a guy who, he could give you 15, 10, and 12, no problem, if it really comes down to that. Obviously, you would prefer like a 37 and 3 kind of night, but at the end of the day, he's, I think, a very well-rounded player, and there's no way you're going to take him out of the game, and I think we're going to see that in his second finals here where, yeah, I think he's gonna he's gonna carry the bulk of that weight as he's been doing, and you know, if they do win,
yeah,
he's for sure gonna be like a big catalyst to that. Because I think
yeah,
even looking back to that first finals, it's sort of similar where with Ant, where they were more so, making it tough on him and letting the others do the work. Not to say that's
yeah.
what Dallas is going to be able to do again, but you know, Jason Tatum in his second finals, he might have to ditch his Jordan Brand deal and wear some Kobe's for the finals. You know what I'm saying?
Bruh. I think Tatum's more better all around than people give him credit for,
hmm
too. Yeah, I completely agree with all that.
What do you
Chin, what
think,
do you
Chin?
think? Who's your X Factors?
Peyton Pritchard?
He could be, though, honestly.
I don't know if he's gonna touch the floor very much.
Peyton Pritchard might have like a good old like 15-point game somewhere in the
He really
series.
could. Um, it's tough. Like I'll start with Dallas. I think their X factor honestly might have to be Kyrie Irving, and I think it's because between all the personnel, like he will probably garner. I wouldn't say the least amount of attraction, but like everyone's going to be looking towards like how they're going to match up against Luca. But I think people have, and I think the talk has been rising, mind you. But I think we've really forgotten how good Kyrie Irving is as a player,
Oh yeah.
and especially, and I mean, obviously, it goes without saying he's probably the best player in ISO even to this day. Um, and so I think he's gonna be the reason why like Dallas might be able to get over humps during certain games because I think how the pattern of this series is going to go is that Celtics are going to lead for a majority of games, but there are going to be a lot of moments where Dallas can go on a 10-2 or 9-2 run. And I think a lot of that can be attributed likely to how good Kyrie Irving will play. As good as Luca is, I think Luca just gets his points throughout the whole night. But we've
Mhm.
seen throughout numerous series now that Kyrie has had like 10-point spurts, 15-point spurts, even, where he's just starting to dominate. And it's moments like that where once he starts to dominate, it also feeds. And I think it's a good word to use in this sense, feeds the aura of Luka Doncic to start scoring too, where he can be confident in passing it out to him. And I've seen so many times when I fucking watch the Mavs, and like it's not easy to guard, mind you, but when Kyrie gets hot, he passes to Luca and he takes that 40-foot three, and it's just like that's when they bury the teams. Like they've been starting to bury teams. I think as soon as Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic both start to click simultaneously. So I think it's the matter of like Kyrie having it click early and just continuing to go. For the Celtics, I do think Jason Tatum is like without question like their biggest X factor, but um, I'd also think their guard play and how good their guards are offensively is going to be
Yeah.
an underrated
Yeah.
statement
Yes.
in this whole series. I think I've watched the Celtics throughout the season, and Derek White has had numerous 20-point games. I don't think he cracked 20 points per game this season. No, not even close. But he, is one of those players who can give you quite a bit. And so I think, um, you know, I think I think their X factor, maybe to put it this way, is just their 3-point game. I think being able to like get their other players hot is probably the more important thing because I think what I find most underrated, and maybe it's not underrated at this point, is that all 5 of their players can shoot like competently. And
Yeah.
I don't, and it's not even competently. That's just maybe putting it lightly. All their players are threats from outside the outside perimeter. Um, and I think you don't want to rely on JT at all times because I think JT is prone to getting pretty cold during certain points of the game when he's just trying to like get a shot going. And I think they really have to just have everyone going at the same time. Because I think it's just a momentum thing this whole series where if JT gets cold, it's likely that Luka and Kyrie are starting to warm up. Like I think their X factors kind of go up against each other. So as much as I think JT's really got to be the focal point, I think he has to be the focal point in the sense of getting his team involved.
Hmm.
I think he's got to be. I think he's got to be a triple double machine, which is maybe not going to happen, but let's 23, 8, and 8. That's a real line I think I want to see from him.
Yeah, that was very well put. I think to backtrack a little bit to the Kyrie thing, I think he's definitely I think just how Kyrie just has like this stoicness to him that he's always had, and this sort of wise beyond his years thing. And I think that's going to be very valuable to the Mavericks in the sense that, you know,
Yeah.
across the entire field here, nobody's playoff resume and nobody's like playoff experience stacks up to Kyrie's. So
Yeah.
I almost expect him to similar in that whether it was game 1 or 2 in the Timberwolves series where I think he sets like a precedence early. I think he's
Yeah, he
gonna
sets the
look,
tone.
yeah, he's gonna look to get into his game early, and then let that kind of be the driving force to letting everybody else get their shots off. And I think that's gonna be their way to win. I don't think is the passive Kyrie. I think Kyrie has to, you know, put his paws on this series. He has to really like go for it in that sense. And, you know, for sure they're going to be playing off of each other. But I would think that if I'm Boston, a majority, as much as smart as they are defensively, I think just the human nature of it is that majority of their defensive attention is going to go to Luka. And that just leaves, Kyrie. It's going to be open season almost, it feels like. And I think that's the thing there where, you know, as great as Boston's defense is and how as great as I think they're going to play, I don't believe there's a scheme on God's green earth that can guard Luka and Kyrie like fully. Like they're going to
Yeah.
get theirs for sure. And I think you guys are right in saying that, I think Boston in all whatever however many games this goes, early game, I think they're gonna have like a firm grip on it. But when it comes to that second half, you know, like we're talking about, second half Kyrie's doing his thing. So I think just a way to, make it so that the hill's not so tall to climb in the second half. You definitely need Kyrie to be, very aggressive, I would think.
Yeah, I think he'll set the tone right off the bat.
No doubt, no doubt.
Um, he's got to lead the charge for sure. Yeah, I think a lot. I think Dallas is going to come into this series with like deer in headlights vibes, especially because we're going into Boston. Um, and we've typically seen Luca do that later in the series. And so I think if there's one guy that they have to like that has to show up, it's got to be Kyrie.
For sure, for sure. But also, let's get into kind of like the Twittery sort of talk. What would y'all say a ring does for like JT, and then we'll go on to the Lucas side of it. But let's start with the Boston side.
JT gets a ring, everyone shuts the fuck up already. Like I think like Jason Tatum is probably maybe the most hated or second most hated player as far as like criticism goes. Just for like accomplishments. I think it's because he, outside of making numerous conference finals, has not touched a lot of different accolades. I think in general, I actually don't know what off the top of my head. I don't know if he was the rookie of the year during his year. Someone fact check.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
I'll
can
I'll
I can
look
also check.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, no, I just think he's like not an accolade heavy player, and I think people expect that from him just with like the precedence, I guess.
Ben Simmons.
I don't.
I was about to say, yeah, I think that was the Ben year.
Yeah, that was the Ben year. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't know. It's not that like he doesn't have anything to show for, but I think he is on that level of like players that just people expect to rise up. Um, I don't. I think for if Luca were to win, like just going to that real quick, I think that would cement Luca as like a player that people are going to consider like
One of the all-time greatest.
one of the all-time greatest. Yeah, like they're gonna put him on that trajectory because I mean, even like just thinking about like fucking 2K Sims, like like Luca always goes to the finals and wins. Like it's kind of like if he wins, in my opinion, he's going to start winning numerous years because he's I don't think he's gonna stop.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's definitely. I think with Tatum, because he's been so great for so long that at some point it's like, oh man, we're getting tired of this. Like win a chip, right? Like you just said, like trying to shut everyone up. So when he does, like he'll finally be in that conversation for okay, yeah, he's one of the best players of all time. But I think there's a significant gap in terms of how Luka's looked at, whether that's, I don't know, just because he's white, or like if the or if that's simply, I think putting basketball completely on the table and everything else off, like definitively, I don't think that there's anybody who has the kind of resume that Luka's come in with, and to have been able to have the success he's had on the floor as a performer. Like the dude puts up freaking insane numbers on a nightly basis and makes it look like the easiest thing on planet Earth. And so I think from an aesthetic standpoint too, right? Like that really plays a part in what these all-time great conversations look like. But for him to have had the success that he's had with, quite frankly, not as nearly good teams in comparison to someone like Jason Tatum. Like this is probably his best team, and on any given year, like let's say they do win a chip. From a roster standpoint, I don't think this is a very competitive roster to every other championship roster that there's been over the last 10, 15 years.
You're talking about Boston?
I'm talking about Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
Like, off the top of my head, you put this team, let's say this Dallas team wins the championship. There's no doubt in my mind you put them up against the 21 Bucks, the 19 Raptors, any of those Warriors teams, those Heat teams. Even to some degree, last year Denver's team was just absolutely insane. I don't think Dallas comes out as a winner against any of these teams. So that also puts into perspective like how good Luka really is in terms of elevating his team's performance. And obviously he's got a guy like Kyrie who's been there before. But again, he's the 1B in this situation. Again, like he was the 1B with LeBron. So in terms of like the story, in terms of performance, in terms of the resume, like if Luka wins a chip, there's absolutely no doubt he's one of the top 50 players of all time. I think he already is there in terms of production. I think he's better than a lot of these legends that we call plumbers and firemen and stuff like that. From like, I'm with
I'm
JJ
not gonna
Redick.
lie, man. I'm taking Evan Fournier over those plumbers. And I
Thank you,
really
thank
fucking with
you.
Evan Fournier like that, man.
We're like, again, it goes back to that stupid conversation of like, yeah, do guys back in the 1970s, like, are they better than any guys today? There's no doubt. If you like JJ Redick made the conversation, if you were to put Kyrie Irving in the 60s, they would think this guy was a freaking devil.
Oh, yeah.
Like on some freaking like possessed magic or something.
If he
Like,
played in
you know what I mean?
Boston, I don't think,
Oh man, he's
I don't want to
getting.
go
Oh
down
my
that
god.
route, but
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you were to put Kyrie Irving in that time, like I think Kyrie would have had several 100-point games.
for sure.
So like, let's just put that into perspective. Anyways, I think if Luka wins a chip, he's in the top 50 conversation. While in comparison to Tatum, like he becomes like one of the best players of all time. But in terms of his production and stuff, it's not like we haven't seen anybody do what he's done before.
Yeah.
And so again, either way, criticism aside, like they win a chip, their careers would take off in terms of how they're looked at, and that's been the case for every player. We've seen with LeBron. How many
Yeah.
times we've seen over and over again, like he can't do it, he can't do it. But then even if they win their title, he finally haters didn't really shut up until 2016.
hmm
So I mean, in terms of
Here's
levels of what the ring would do for them, it's pretty massive.
yeah. I think I have a hot take real quick, but
Uh-oh.
going back to if the Celtics were to win,
Off your shit,
in
man.
comparison to the Dallas winning, I think the Celtics have a case of going back to back in comparison to Dallas. I
Oh,
think
for sure.
Dallas's
No doubt.
I think Dallas's
Yeah.
run was just like very great, and they've been the best team in the West, and that's why they're here. But I think if the Celtics win, the energy and the like confidence in their current roster will only just be as good as this year. Whereas if they lose, I think it'd be detrimental. I think they would consider moving some key pieces. But if they win, I do think just with any move next year, anybody getting moved, I can't really see a team that can easily dethrone them. Even if we look
Yeah.
at how good OKC could be next year, how good fucking, I don't know, Philly could be now that they're all healthy. I I, I don't really see a team that is going to be as good as them next year.
Yeah. Can I put it this way, Chin?
Sure, let's hear it.
If I'm a team, if Boston wins, I'm making trades to try and be as good as that team to beat that team. If
Yeah,
Dallas wins, maybe I can run it back with the same squad that I had this year.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
You know what I mean?
very good way of putting it.
Like, if I were to meet exactly, if we said, okay, whoever wins this championship this year is guaranteed to be in the finals next year, and let's say I am Minnesota or the Clippers, for example, or like the Cavs, probably a really good conference, or New York. I'm like, I feel good about what we have. If Boston wins it, considering the path they've had, and let's say they dominate Dallas and win in 4 or 5 games, which I don't think is out of the picture because they've been so good. But I'm like, oh, I'm looking for any way to improve my team to
yeah,
match up against Boston. So like,
The player movement will be crazy if Boston wins.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because
yeah.
like if you think about it, they have I would I know that his production, but his impact was all-star level production to Derek White. This team technically has 4 all-stars.
Oh, absolutely.
No doubt.
They're a super team by all accounts in terms of like the guys they have. Like Porzingis is great. Tatum is great. Jalen Brown, great. Derek White, great. Drew Holiday, great.
Maybe 5.
Yeah, maybe
Like,
5
play-
because like
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Oh, well, low key, maybe 6. Al's still got some of that pedigree.
I mean yeah, I mean again pedigree, right? Pedigree is like that the resume. They've got 6 guys who've done it all. So I mean like I this is a team. I mean Horford's probably gonna take a little step back next year in terms of just he's getting older.
yeah.
But Frank, man, maybe Drew because he's obviously on the older side too. But like, it doesn't look like it doesn't
Oh,
look like he's
they
taking a
kind of
step back
they
whatsoever.
can't afford for Drew to take a step back. They gave him 150.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This team is dangerous, man. Like I think this is a team that could probably make without you know until they have to. It's probably a 3 4 year run here in
Yeah,
terms of their current window.
you don't want to throw out that D word, but getting
Dynasty's
these
definitely
getting these 4 games is the first step towards like accomplishing that. No doubt.
yeah. Championship dynasty, yes, but I think they've been a dynasty since Tatum arrived. I think they've been a successful franchise in terms of their run with Tatum and in that time frame. Like, when was the time? When did they make the playoffs? What was that 16, 17?
That time they lost to the Cavs.
Yes. Like, when
I
was
think
their first? Because Tatum's made
2017
the
sounds
That's
playoffs.
right.
Yeah,
12.
he's made the playoffs almost every year he's been in the league.
They have pretty much made it, I think, every
So
time.
they are, again, I think, in terms of Boston in the conversation, like, yeah, they got to win a title. They've got to win a few. But this is by easily one of the most successful runs in terms of a franchise's history. Because even though like they've got 18 banners, like the longevity in this century, especially the last 5 years with the championship being switched to a new team almost every single year, like that speaks volumes to like how good Tatum is too to some degree.
For sure. I mean, yeah. I guess to give my little spiel on it, Tatum wins the ring. I agree with shit. I think it's kind of similar to when Giannis won, where you finally just get that monkey off your back, and it's not to be critical of Giannis, but I think ever since they won, there's just been a sense of passivity. But I think when it comes to
Yeah,
Boston, just being in that nature of, you know, title town, whatever you want to call it, you know, the house that Bob Cousy built. Oh no, they don't really call it that, but I think that there's just like a culture there that you know that winning is infectious, and if they win this, it might damn near be a pandemic in Boston, But you know, this is the first step for them to potentially being cemented as like, because I think if they win this one here, the way the trajectories are showing out, I would say that Jason Tatum might end up being the best Celtic in this century. You know, that's over a guy like Paul Pierce, KG, and Ray Allen. I wouldn't say it's too hard to do that just because,
Longevity.
yeah, longevity wise. So if Tatum gets this one thing, I don't think there's anybody in this century messing with his resume in terms of being a Celtic. And when it comes to, being it was such a historic franchise, you know, you want to be in the names of a Bird, a McHale, a Havlicek, a Russell, now potentially, if they win, a Tatum. So, you know, I think it's just like, it's almost, you knew Boston would get back to here. It was just a matter of when, not if. And now that they're
Right.
here, I'm excited. And if Luka wins, I love Larry, but I think he might be the greatest white boy to ever touch a basketball, man. I mean, Ruben, you already hit it on the nail here. There's nobody in the NBA in history that's come in with like this kind of resume, EuroLeague champion, and not even like just the fact of that, but the fact that you're doing it with a club like Real Madrid, who, we obviously know about their dominance in soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. And to see that like that pedigree and just, similar to Boston, that winning culture, I think you've seen that where Luka's never really, yes, does he complain a little too much at times? Definitely do the same thing in soccer. But I think the one thing that's never been a doubt is that competitive nature and that like that ability to succeed when it comes to Luka. And if you put this like if he gets this title, a lot of the discourse has been if he wins, you can almost like pencil him in for MVP next year. And, as much as you don't want to do that, you want to let things play out. I think that's not a hot take at all. So, I mean, Luka, if he wins, oh man, it's Bird and him, and he's not too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. He'll be the greatest white boy ever, yo. He's got it. There's no doubt. Luca, man, Luca's just a dog, bro. Like you just like putting all the analytics aside, whatever technical speak. Dude, that dude, like the way he came out and when he drew that and one on Jada McDaniels and looked at the dude that was like with the baby stuff and he was like, "Who's crying now?" And I was like, and Snoop Dogg was like, "That boy cold." I was like, dude, like Luca's just got it, man. Like if there's anybody in terms of mentality who's got like very close to that Mamba mentality, like I think he's the one guy in the league right now that just literally wants to kill you. Like and Edwards too, but like he ran out of gas, and I think it's because this is his first real run,
Yeah.
and I think he'll get there. But dude, Luca just wants to step on your neck, and like he wants to punch you while you're down, and like that's oh man, I can't remember having a player like that who loved that moment,
Yeah.
like in such
I
a long
don't think
time.
there's really been anyone except Kobe that like
Yeah,
has that.
he has
And
it,
then
man.
even like Kyrie's low key like always the
Oh,
forgotten
100%.
like disciple.
Yeah.
And he's got that to him, but he's like an ethical killer almost, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
it's like,
he don't talk nothing.
yeah, he's
He's
not
about his
talking no
business.
junk, but before you know it, 30.
Oh yeah, he's an assassin. Like he'll kill you, but he won't tell you.
No doubt.
While Luca goes out there and steps on your neck and curb stomps you and does all like
Mm.
man, there's having those two on the team, dude. Man,
Did
crazy.
did y'all see that clip of I think it was the winner in game 2 or 3 where Jamal Crawford called it like word for word? Have y'all seen that clip?
Like the how the game was gonna end.
Yeah, when he cooked Rudy.
Oh yeah, he was on the companion, right?
Yeah, and he like literally called it word for word how it was gonna go, even all the
Yeah,
way to like the little one leg hop. But yeah, man. Oh man,
special.
when it comes to that word aura, Luca's Luca's oozing with it, man. Luca's oozing with
Oozing. That shots.
it. All right. I feel like we've covered everything all to get to this final point here where, finals are what? 5 days away or so?
Yeah, it starts next Thursday on the 6th.
All right, boys. What are your guys' picks? Not just who's going to win, but I want to hear in how many games. I
That
know
would
it's
be nice. I'm gonna say 6.
Boston in
I
6.
think I think they take in 6.
What are you thinking, Rube?
My heart says Dallas in 7, but my brain, objectively speaking, and not thinking with emotion, and just because I wrote out my pick with Dallas, picking them to be in the Western Conference
Oh, are
Finals
you
from the
are
very
you
beginning of
cashing
the
out
year.
now?
I, I want to, yeah, man, cash out now. I think Boston takes it in 6. I think Boston takes it in 6, truthfully.
Hmm.
Um, but I would love to see Dallas take it home, just because, like, oh man, just seeing Kyrie. There's something about me that wants Kyrie to see Kyrie, and the other part is I just hate Boston as a franchise. I hate the Celtics.
That's fair.
That and that's because, and it's hard for me to be unbiased, but objectively speaking, yes, I think Boston takes it in 6. I might even go as far to say 5, because I think Boston is really that good, and I think people talk about how easy their path has been, but dude, Boston is so good. There's a reason. There's a reason they've been so good, and it looks like they've coasted every game all year long. They're that good. So I think Boston 6 for sure.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like Boston just has a date with destiny.
Mm.
All the stars are aligned for them to win. I mean, we already talked about how their regular season's finally over and they're playing the meaningful basketball now. But the Dallas Mavericks are riding in on an asteroid to create their own destiny, baby. Give me Dallas in 7.
Half of me is with you, half of me is with Chin right now. That's why there's 3 of us, because, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all good, man. But yeah, I think when it comes to in the last few minutes, when it's all really gonna matter and you get into that clutch time scenario, as great as Boston is defensively, and as much as the amount of hell they're gonna give Dallas, I just think that when you have Kyrie and Luca, there's no real like surefire counter to that. You
You
know,
can't stop a dog from playing with its toys.
Honey's Dundies, man. I think a Maverick would stomp over a little leprechaun any day of the week. You know what I'm saying?
Dude.
So it's like, even if you blitz one of them, the other's going to be open. And if you somehow mitigate both of them, PJ Washington's hanging in that corner. We didn't talk a lot about Derrick Jones Jr., but I would just like to note the brother is shooting 40% from 3.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't want to like hedge all your bets on him hitting all of those, but he's not so much the cone he is on offense as he used to be in terms of just being like the dunker. And then
He's become a real 3-and-D threat with the occasional slash now, because
oh yeah,
he's a
man,
perfect fit to what they
he's
do.
going to get a big bag this summer.
Well deserved, though.
I do hope he's able to stay in Dallas, but him and Malik Monk are probably the guys who earned themselves like the most money this year, I would say.
Oh, 100%. And OG Anunoby.
Oh, true. Man. As great as like I'm excited for the finals, this off season is gonna be nice.
It's gonna be nice.
This off season is gonna be nice. Even like the draft. Because like I understand that there's no like Wemby level player, but I mean I think just the level of role
I think
players,
there's some difference makers in this draft,
like
for sure.
like Stephon Castle, I think is someone I'm very,
Yeah.
very high on. Dog.
Bronny James, dog.
Do you guys genuinely, I guess this is our little topic to close here. Do you guys genuinely think that if Phoenix is on the clock at 22, they're gonna select Bronny?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah.
Bro, that is That is so fucking
Because
disgusting.
if their management has been any indication that they are
Blinded.
let me take it back.
Oh,
The owner wait, what's
honestly,
that?
he said blinded.
Yeah, I think if there's any indication, the ownership is very much story driven and resume driven, as opposed to like what is happening on the court. And when their ownership, I forgot the guy's name when he came out and said like everybody
Ishbia.
would die to be in
Yeah.
Ishbia would everyone would die to be in our position with these players and no draft picks. I was like, yeah, this brother's taking Bronny James at number one.
Oh my goodness. Oh fuck. You were because I was always thinking it from the perspective of like nobody's that fucking stupid. nobody's nobody's that stupid to
I
take
would like
like
to think James Jones isn't. I would like to think James Jones isn't, but I don't think this is ultimately his call this draft.
yeah. I mean, you
Because
saw Ishbia threw the bag out. Yeah, let's pay DeAndre Aiden, and then yeah, let's cut all of our like, let's make our games free to watch for not for local television, which is great. But like, I think when you saw those articles come out that like he's kind of just the bag of money, and it's like, you know, just because you rode Tom Izzo's bench means you know how to operate a basketball team. So, oh man, I
he's got
really
money
hope
to
they
play
don't.
with, man.
But fuck, they damn near might.
Yeah, they
Just
might
for
because I think there's like from a viewership and gate standpoint, and like having worked with the NBA so closely recently, I'm like I almost wouldn't put it past Phoenix as like we're gonna prioritize sales and things like that.
mm,
Considering all the moves they made to throw out a whole bunch of money this past year, them getting Bronny James and trying to build storyline around the Suns this year. Like, there's also a reason why Ishbia said like having those three guys and no draft picks is so important because the difference in attendance that would make also. Like, I think he's a very, very smart businessman the way he's approaching it.
mm.
But in terms of the product on the court, very clear separation in terms of that. So, Ronnie James, you are a Phoenix Sun.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, real shit, y'all. If you had to take Nazir Little or Bronny James, who you playing?
Night.
I
Pretty close, because both of them ain't go see no fucking court.
Oh my god, man.
Sorry, Chip, what were you gonna say?
no. I think like honestly, there is a player that I think, you know, I don't know how to put it because I do have like both perspectives, but I personally have some belief in Brian James, and I think it's only
Yeah.
because
Yeah, like
I think
I don't think Bronny's ass. I just think that for where he's gonna get picked, he's gonna be considered cheap.
oh, of course, yeah, like I think any way you put it, like he doesn't deserve to go first round, but I think the precedence makes sense.
I could make a case for him being a real NBA player though.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's projecting to be like kind of like a Lou Dort almost, where he's like a 3-and-D. I think he could
Yeah.
get some of that grittiness like through having that chip on his shoulder. And I think he could carve out a
Yeah.
career for sure.
Well, I think it's like I think what happened to him in college, going down with the heart surgery and then
Yeah.
like and having to play that system in USC, I think like there was a lot of factors working against him. But before everything, the guy was a surefire prospect too.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
like
that was a sorry to cut you off. That was such a
yeah,
shit USC team.
it was a terrible
Yeah.
team. And they came off the bench and like I just didn't think they were utilizing because like at least from the games that I watched and the moments that I watched, he can make an impact. He can make an impact, but the college game is also so different. He's been bred to play the pro style game for so long
Mm.
in AAU, and college is just a whole different environment. And I find that that's also not a great outlier because we've seen so many great college players come into the NBA, and where are they now? And you've seen so many so many college prospects and players who ever really showed out. Unless they were like 4-year guys, go late in the draft and they come out becoming real NBA players. It's because the game's so different. I think just Bronny has. I mean, I had a guy go down to the combine,
So
and he was telling
Rose,
me, he was like, "Yeah, so Ross, he was like, yo, Bronny looks real. Like the athletic stats, like his time, everything that he went through at the combine looked really good. I mean, he shot the lights out in shooting drills. And then when he has the ball in his hands, it seems like he's comfortable. So I mean, from the things that I've seen, like I think he's going to translate so much more differently to the pro game than college.
yeah,
Um,
I've seen a lot
and
of
then you play
people.
role.
I've seen a lot of people throw out like the Peyton Watson comparison, just in
Yeah.
terms of seeing what they were able to do in college with their limited time, and then seeing how it's translating to like the impact now. And I can see that with Brownie for sure.
Saw some Davion Mitchell comparisons. I was like, that's not a bad comparison. I saw Mark J. Spears say poor man's because some scouts said that. I'm like, those guys are obviously closer to the game than we are. Like, I don't watch Bronny James up close, so maybe they are right on that. But I don't know, man. Like, when a guy has a very fire skill paired with athleticism that'll probably last him for at least 5 to 6 years before he has to start thinking about other ways to make an impact on the game. Like, he has a lot of tools. It's a matter of like if someone can help him hone in on that
Mm.
and find a role. I mean, the way that we talk about Bronny, we could talk about several other guys the same way. It's just obviously he's LeBron's son, which is why he gets so much attention.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think he could be a real NBA player. I think Bryce is the one where you sit there and say like I would probably give up because like the way he plays in high school, his size and his ability.
Oh man, yeah, I would give him my left nut for Bryce. On God, like he's
He's a
just
special talent.
yeah, he's got it.
Agreed.
Bryce has it.
The left nut. Damn. Not like us. They not like us.
Man, yeah, bro. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm just trying to think like the last time we did do a podcast, like we all thought Drake was a good guy.
We all thought he was a good guy. West Coast for life.
Hey man, that's true. We're on the west coast
West
of Canada.
Coast. West Coast, guys. West Coast, man. I'm riding with Kendrick, man. That's crazy. OB ho, OB ho. Now step, yo, all the dancers are going crazy, bro.
Oh my
Step this
goodness.
way,
Yeah.
step that way, now step this way. Are you my friend? Are we locked in? Now step this way, yo. Somebody from OVO is gonna listen to this and be like, "Man, we're canceling that podcast."
That's okay, man. The way if that if the art on what's it called? They Not Like Us is true. Not like
What? You can't speak, buddy.
yeah, exactly. But this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We're excited to kind of get back into the swing of things. You know, we are all three of us are like adults, so it's not like we're able to get on here like as often as we would want to, but when we do, it's always a good time.
We didn't make millions of dollars so that we could sit and
Yeah.
talk basketball all
I
day,
didn't make
every day.
$100 million plus to say the NBA is not set up for long term like, economic success. But you know, I mean, us being Canadians with the Olympics coming up this summer, we're definitely excited to talk about that. You know, everybody knows what happens with the off-season cycle. Obviously, going to talk about some player movements, free agency, and all that good stuff. So, if you're new, make sure you lock in, especially if you got to this point because you've had to somewhat enjoyed it. And if you're old or returning, welcome back. You know, life got in the way of things, but we're back and we are. I'm always excited to talk ball with my boys. Appreciate y'all.
Sir.
And with that, stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.
See y'all soon.
Back shots.
Back shots.
Ah.